Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Sensei for this opportunity to speak and his confidence and trust in us. I just hope he doesn't regret it. John and I are going to share the talk, and the plan is that I open up and talk for about 15 minutes or so, and then John will take over. What we'd like is to open it up to a general discussion at the end, if you like, when we've both had a chance to speak, but I know you want to speak as well. If you want to ask questions of clarification as we go along, please do. But if you're opening up a kind of big topic area, we might sort of back that back to the end. Okay? I was intrigued by the way Sensei ended his talk yesterday, because it very much dovetails coincidentally, I think, with what I wanted to say, which is Sensei was talking about that lovely quote from Van Gogh in that letter to his brother when he talked about the courage needed when faced with a blank canvas and you're a painter. And that courage kind of introduces what I want to say. I had a very interesting encounter in the west of Ireland this summer. I just spent 2 weeks sailing with a friend, sailing his yacht round the bottom bit of Ireland. You know, that sticky outy bit with all the peninsulas and things in the Atlantic. And my first time sailing, so it was a bit of an adventure. And we ended the trip in Dingle town. And I'd gone to buy some stuff for the boat. And I ended up in this little shop, and one of those chance encounters, I got talking to the shopkeeper, who it turned out was Ireland's champion ice swimmer. And she was telling me that she'd swum in Siberia. She'd taken part in a competition swimming in Siberia, swimming a kilometre in water at 0 degrees centigrade. I thought, how is this possible? Apparently seawater freezes at -4 because of the salt. So she was swimming a kilometre at 0 degrees C, not in a wetsuit, but in an ordinary bathing suit. And it turned out that was only half the story. She'd also been part of a women's relay team that had swum round the entire Irish coast. Hundreds of miles. I don't know how long it took them. But if you think about Ireland's a big place. And then I've afterwards found out it was more than that. She'd been part of a women's relay team that had swum across the Bering Strait. So the Bering Strait is in the Arctic Circle, where Alaska kind of reaches out almost to Russia. And that bit of water in between, she'd swum across that as well. And it turned out that her particular interest, and I laugh at this now, her particular interest was in the safety aspects of ice swimming. So how not to die of hypothermia and cold shock. It turned out she'd written a book on this. Now I happen to know a few nutty people that like swimming in cold water, and one or two of them are here in this room. I thought, I'll get this book, and I got her to sign it for me. And she wrote a dedication, and she wrote, "Everything is sweetened by risk. Everything is sweetened by risk." And I thought that was a lovely dedication, because, especially for me, having just had this sailing adventure, and we'd had a few kind of incidents in that trip, and I thought, yeah, and I understand that. And when I thought about it, really risk has been part of I really resonate with that idea that risk sweetens the experience, and that's been my experience for most of my life, I think. I'm not talking about being reckless here. I'm not talking about cycling without a helmet. That's just mad. I'm talking about taking a chance, going outside your comfort zone, not playing safe. And the idea that risk sweetens things, I really feel that. It came to me this week, shaving my head to come here. You really feel the cold and the rain and the wind, and you're really aware of your scalp, and you feel kind of naked and exposed when you've shaved your head, and that kind of is a very physical sensation. And then I got to thinking about risks in Zen practice. Where's the risk? Sitting on your bum. But there are risks in this practice. I started sitting in 2001 after my dad died. And I knew deep down at the time that I couldn't go on like I was. Something had to change. I was avoiding dealing with things. I was covering it up with busyness and distraction and alcohol. And I knew I couldn't carry on. And I really, that quote of Dogen's in the Genjo Koan, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. I really know that one, I think. But I think that takes a certain amount of courage, because I don't know what your experience was of Zazen, but mine, I was surprised, I think, how much stuff came up and how uncomfortable it is when you start sitting, and how you confront these parts of yourself that you'd really much rather stayed in the cupboard. Sometimes you open the cupboard and go, no, close the cupboard again. And sitting, you really, I found anyway, for myself, really opened that up. And I think it takes a certain amount of courage and taking a risk to look at that stuff, because what if you don't like what you find? What does it mean when you have to face the dark side? So distraction is very tempting, and I'm still very good at distracting myself. Really good at distracting myself. And then that quote of the Genjo Koan, it goes on, to study the self is to forget the self. Well, that's easy, isn't it? Self-annihilation. That's a risk too. That's dropping the small self. That's scary. And then, in my practice, came that decision about Jukai. I was hooked. But in receiving the precepts, there was that question that arose for me: do I trust this process? Do I trust this teacher? Is this what I want? I decided to take a chance. I'm glad I did. And then came Tokudo. Tenshin Roshi's summed it up for me when I asked him about it. He said, accomplish the way and serve the people. So I really admire Wu and Sarah for their decision in making that vow, because for me the questions that came up, what if I fail? What if I can't do this? And what was even scarier, actually, when I admit it, what if this changes me? What if I don't recognize myself? What if my family and friends don't recognize me? What if it really does transform me? What will I do then? That was actually quite a scary place. Actually recognizing that I was taking the risk. I actually might change. That's scary. And now, starting out doing interviews and beginning to teach, that feels incredibly privileged, I have to say. I'm always amazed that anybody comes to see me. Really. And what I'm aware of in that situation, I'm aware that oftentimes the people that come in are feeling vulnerable and exposed, and sometimes they're taking a risk and telling me about things that are going on. But I have to tell you that I kind of feel that too. Sat where I'm sitting, I don't know what questions will arise. You don't know what's going to walk in the door, what you're going to deal with. Am I up to this? Can I really deal with this? These are, for me, some of the questions that arise now. In the Jukai ceremony and in the Tokudo ceremony, because we renew the precepts, and we start the precept ceremony by taking refuge. We vow to take refuge in the Buddha, to take refuge in the Dharma, to take refuge in the Sangha. I don't know what was your feeling about refuge? What do you think of when you hear refuge?
Safety.
Safety.
Support.
Safety and support.
Containment. Containment.
Containment, yeah.
A place that someone else has built.
Okay. Interesting.
Nourishment.
Nourishment. I agree with all of those. I think that was my take on refuge as well. So I was really interested when I was reading Dado Laura's book, Heart of Practice. I don't know if you know it. It's about the precepts, and he talks about refuge, taking refuge, and he had a really interesting take on it, which I had never really thought about before. I didn't know about, and he said the origin of the word refuge, taking refuge, comes from the Japanese kie-e. And kie apparently means to unreservedly throw yourself into something. No holding back, no safety net. So that wasn't my kind of take on refuge at all. And the second part, A, means to rely upon. Now that I can understand, but the first part, to unreservedly throw yourself into something, now that was interesting. And Laurie goes on to illustrate this by describing a game that he used to play with his kids when they were very small. He said when they were very small, so they could stand up and not walk, they'd play a game where he'd stick them on the sideboard and tell them to jump, to throw themselves. So they did, throw themselves off the sideboard, and he'd catch them. And this was the family game. So there's refuge. To unreservedly throw yourself into something, no holding back.
I'm glad you said that, and he caught them.
Yeah. Yeah, safeguarding issues. And I think if you look at refuge that way, it puts quite a different gloss, certainly for me anyway. So taking refuge is not casual encounter. This is a whole body and mind vow, wholehearted commitment. And still, the question that arises for me is, can I do this? Can I risk this? So one of the things I want to perhaps pick up on when we talk about this at the end is for you to think about now, we can come back to this, your own experience and of risk in this practice, an attitude to risk, to taking a chance. Are you able to throw yourself off the sideboard? And the other thing I want to touch on is that phrase that you hear in Zen about it being like a three-legged stool, and the three legs are great faith, great doubt, and great determination. That's something, I don't know, that intrigues me, that one. Great faith is not something outside myself. Great faith is the faith that I am awake and that I cannot fail to discover myself. That is the great faith. Great doubt is not intellectual, it's a whole body-mind sense of inquiry. And I think, John, you want to touch on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one, great determination, is a statement about I can take the final step, I can break through. And the question that arises for me still is, am I holding back and can I take the risk? Can I do this? So, to get back to my ice swimmer, everything is sweetened by risk. My experience has been, I think, that this process is organic, it's circular, it's seasonal, it's certainly not linear. But I keep coming back to that question for me, and it's one that really informs my life and my practice. We need to take risks. If we keep doing the same things in the same way, why do we expect a different outcome? If we're in this process, if we're here this week because we want something to change, and that's what brought me into the practice, I don't know about you, that's why I'm here. So, how do you do that if you just keep doing the same old thing? And that's what I keep coming back to. So I think the challenge is, can you do something new? Can you do something you've never done before? Can you experiment? Can you throw yourself off the sideboard?
Okay, as Andy said, thank you to Sensei for giving us the opportunity to speak here.
Try that.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like the two Ronnies here, but yeah, it's a real privilege. It's a little daunting looking out of this sea of faces here. And what I wanted to talk about was, as Andy hinted at, was doubt and resistance in practice. And I think Sensei touched on this the other day about, even with Sesshin. And so my first question really is just for get the ball rolling, is has anybody here never or rarely experienced resistance to sitting or Sesshin? Tim, I thought it would be you.
Very rare. In fact, never.
We can get you help.
But I like
It's fine. It's fine.
That's obvious.
But for the majority of us, resistance to sitting, and resistance. Even if the resistance is, I just don't feel like doing it now. Maybe I'll do it another time. That sort of resistance. And to Sesshin, maybe, you know, I could be doing other things, or I'm so busy out there, I don't have time for it. Next question is, has ever anybody never or rarely had doubt arise while sitting? Doubt. Pardon? About anything.
Can you repeat the question?
Has anybody never had doubt arise? Whether that's great doubt, small doubt, you know, about practice arise in your sitting. Has anybody never experienced that? Okay. Thank you. So I have a talk to give now. That's great. So I'm going to tell you something for a moment that might not seem to be related, but I'll come back to it. Because I experience doubt and resistance all the time. It seems just part of the practice to me. It's not the fact that it arises; it's the fact of how do you deal with it? How do you respond to it? So in my flat in Liverpool, I have a piece of furniture which belonged to my grandparents, possibly even to my great-grandparents, but certainly my grandparents had it when I was a kid. And it has that indefinable quality of wabi-sabi, piece of old furniture that is very well used and has a lot of history in it. And you know, the point that I'm sure this has happened to you when grandparents' house was being sort of distributed, the contents. Nobody wanted it, and I really wanted it. I liked all the furniture, but this one in particular, because what I remember is as a kid is going to this. What it is, it's like a bureau or writing table, you know, with a fold down. A cabinet on top, drawers underneath, but a fold-down writing desk. Probably from the, I don't know, interwar years, maybe the 1930s. And what I remember about it, there's a little drawer in it, and in this drawer there was a never-ending supply of licorice all sorts. Didn't matter how many we were given, it was always filled up again. So I remember that very distinctly about it. And inevitably, you know, the ink stains, few little ink marks around. And this, of course, was from the time when refillable fountain pens, some of you will remember them, was the cutting edge of communication technology. We were still using pens. I mean, a lot of people of their generation didn't have phones in their houses, for example. If you wanted to communicate, you wrote. And I have to admit, another aspect of it was the unforgivable cigarette burn in the writing table, which dates directly to May 1972, when I decided to start smoking when I was revising for a school exam, and there's the evidence, cigarette burn. You know. So this piece of furniture means a lot to me in my current life. So I've got my 4 Catholic kids, my wife, grandchildren, a dog who died. A few of you knew her, but you know, I used to do retreats with us, did Rahatsu one year. I've got all that on there, and then the writing desk is still there, and then underneath is a couple of drawers. And these drawers are filled with stuff from my mother's house, so that when she died, I took a lot of things from there, you know, and what's in there is photographs, press cuttings, you know, deaths and marriages, old postcards. I don't think she ever threw away a single postcard she ever received. You know, she would collect these things. and lots of other memorabilia. And every so often I'll have a look in these drawers and say, yep, still there. And one of these days I'm really going to sort this out. But I can't bring myself yet to deal with it. And this is 20 years on since she died. So I've still got these drawers still full of all my memorabilia there. And one of these days I will say, it's a bit like, you can probably see where this is going. It's a bit like one of these days I will sort out my life. So what's this got to do with doubt and resistance? Well, when I come on Sesshin, and Andy's touched on it and Sensei before, and people have brought it up in interview as well, it is a little bit like sitting down at the desk with a series of drawers, you know. It's sort of, right, now let's open the closet and see what lurks within, you know. Or as Ken Jones used to say, God love him, let's see what's on at Skull Cinema tonight. You know. So I know that, I don't know about for you, but I know that some of the resistance I feel to coming on Sesshin is, you know, it's strange. I've got to be with people that I like, you know, that I sit with, who are friends. I'm going to be fed. What is there not to like about it? And yet the resistance comes up. And for me, I think that resistance is, I know I'm going to be going through that stuff. Much as I want to be serene and, you know, I've cracked it, I don't do that anymore. Of course, my life comes up right here. And so what is that set of drawers like? Well, I've still got all the images. So all the images come up of people, history, places, events, videos, you know. The whole thing is there. It comes up in here, just in the space here. Of course, all that comes up. There's a drawer that's labelled emotion. So emotion comes up, and not just, you know, not just anger or fear or frustration or irritation. You know, the stuff that happens on Sesshin as well, where we can knock up against each other. Little things can get magnified in our minds into very big things. It's part of the process. Joy can come up, but you know, the thing with emotions I find is that joy can come up and sadness can follow, and contentment can arise and frustration can follow. It's a very movable sort of area, the whole thing of emotion. But inevitably it comes up. So for me, a really important part of this practice for me is it is not about blanking that stuff off. That would be dangerous and silly to even think that this sort of practice is about blanking the mind and blanking the emotions. To me, it's quite the opposite. It's about fully being aware of those emotions, fully exploring what is happening, you know, here on this mat, in my body, when I'm starting to feel frustration, anger, what have you, and really experiencing it. The issue is not about not feeling, it's about not necessarily acting out of that emotion, not acting out of anger or irritation or frustration, but fully experiencing the emotion seems really important. Next drawer, doubt. There's a couple of compartments to doubt. One is the doubt that we talked about, which is the constricting, restraining doubt of, I'm not sure I can do this. Andy said, I'm not sure I can do a talk. We'll see what happens. Yeah. I'm not sure I'm going to make it in time. I'm not sure if the bus is going to turn up. That sort of mundane doubt. Through to, I'm not sure I can recover that relationship. Much as I would want to, it's proving too difficult. I'm not sure she loves me in the way that I would like to be loved. I'm not sure I can recover this project from the floor up again. I'm not sure I can do that. I'll give it a go, but that's a sort of doubt. And of course the doubt does extend to practice. Well, the doubt in practice for me would be, I doubt if my backside will take another sitting. or you know, am I going to see this through to the end of the week? Or even more, you know, the doubts. This doesn't happen much at all now, but it's still there, but it used to come up quite a lot. I don't know whether this is the right practice for me. I like the guys, I like my teacher, but I'm just not sure that this is for me. All this sitting, doing nothing, apparently. Yeah. So there's all those sorts of doubts. Those sort of doubts are quite constraining and restricting. And what I feel with those is that there is the opposite. There's affirmation. So I can match a doubt of, I doubt I can do this by saying to myself, you can do it. I doubt I can recover that project. Of course I can, I just need help. I doubt this person really loves me, or I doubt that I can survive without this person in my life. Another part of me says, of course you can. Affirmation. So that to me is a lot of our working ground day to day. Doubts about what I can do, affirmation, which battles with. So it's a sort of cheap sort of cognitive therapy, if you like. Replace that with that. I can't, I can. You can't, you know. So that's the sort of working area. I've got to just mention, I'm not addicted to The Simpsons, but incidentally, I forgot to say, I am hopelessly addicted to licorice allsorts. And I'll tell you what an addiction is, and I'm sure you already know, but it's where you don't like being given the present of the thing that you really like, because you're going to have to eat the whole packet. That's an addiction. Yeah, but sorry, where was I?
Great doubt.
Simpsons.
Great doubt.
And Simpsons.
Simpsons. Oh yeah, yeah. So there was an episode in which Homer. Sorry if you don't like The Simpsons. I mean, the kids were always watching it growing up, and Homer gets stuck in a snowstorm. He has to abandon his car, and he's forcing his way through the snowdrifts to make his way home. And he's saying to himself, what am I going to do? How am I going to? And then he starts saying, I can do this. You can do it. You can do it, as he's going through this snowdrift. You can do it. And then another voice comes and says, no, you can't. No, you can't. I can. You can't. I can. You can't. Who are you? I'm the voice of doubt. Well, shut up. And it just seems a lot of time in daily life we're caught in this dilemma of, yes I can, no I can't, and we try to manage our way through. So that's in the doubt drawer. Doubt and affirmation is constantly in battle there, I think, for lots of us. But there is another form of doubt, as Andy referred to, great faith, great determination, great doubt. And my simple understanding of that, as somebody described it, is when you pick up the stick of practice, you're showing great determination. You're going to take hold of this. But the two ends of it are faith and doubt. They're like, you can't have one without the other. Great faith, great doubt. So how is that different? How is great doubt different to just ordinary, everyday doubt? I can't do this stuff. And again, Ken, I'm fond of quoting Ken, because he was here for many years, and he would say, this sort of practice might just attract those amongst us who are just sufficiently neurotic to ask the question, what is this? What is this life? What am I experiencing? Questions such as, if there is no self, or let's say if there is no self, separate, enduring self, what is this then? You know the story of the monk who goes to the master and says, I have it, you don't exist, I don't exist, none of this exists. And what does the master do?
Slaps him.
Whacks him. He says, what's that then? The monk screams. So if none of this exists, in a way, or if I don't exist, it's a bit of a bummer, really, isn't it? I mean, what is this then? Who is it that's seeing through these eyes? Who is it that's hearing through these ears? Who is it that's experiencing this emotion? What happens next? If there is an element of my manifestation, which is unborn and undying, where do I experience that? You know. So these questions, unlike the other doubt questions, are not constraining. If anything, they're opening. It seems to me, they're opening, you know, life to, rather than a series of can't, doubt if that's going to happen. It opens it up to more of an awe about what a miracle to actually be alive here, and what is it about? How do we manifest it? I'm sort of coming to the end now. We're going to open it up for some questions. But so in terms of doubt and resistance, I think the great doubt questions are fundamentally different in nature. They're not a limiting, closing down. They actually open us up to a different possibility. And for me, that's part of the essence of Zen practice. Because it opens us to other possibilities. And you know, a lot of the time it seems what the answer is, you know, in Zen practice that comes up in relation to these vast questions is what? I don't know. You know, I'll just give you a quick, for example, I think Roshi used this a little while ago. You know, I have a piece of paper in that drawer that actually says I was born in Oldham in January '53. I don't know. I'll buy that. Yeah, but I have no recollection of it. No recollection. You know, if that's what it tells me. And apparently, I took these exams, you know, some years ago, and I did this and I did that. You know, there's a trajectory that I can trace through paperwork, but it's not really relevant to this now, other than maybe I did get born in Oldham, maybe somewhere else. So not knowing, as we said, is most intimate. Staying with not knowing, actually accepting that I don't need certainty. I'll just finish with this, because I think it does come up for me a lot, and it comes up, I know, for other folks as well. Is when I come on Sesshin, like I say, sitting down at the drawers, you know, it's like, right, this time, this autumn, I will sort this out. You know, once and for all, I'll come out with some clear answers. I'll be certain of my plan and my future direction. And then some point in the retreat, what happens is that I forget that. Thank goodness, you know. I forget it. I forget the pressure I'm putting myself on to have a clear plan at the end of the retreat. You know, when folks say, "Did you enjoy the retreat?" Well, yes, but enjoyment, you know, it's a process. So, yeah. So not necessarily needing certainty about anything is maybe okay. Okay, I'm done.
Questions? Anything? Yes, Emma.
I don't know if I got this right, but from your talk I kind of heard that difficult feelings and difficult experiences are something you went through at the beginning of your practice, and that they're not...
Oh no, it's still very much, still ongoing. I think the shock initially was, because I think a lot of people think that meditation is somehow about peace and tranquility and all that stuff. And I kind of had that script, I think, to start with, and I very quickly found out there was a lot more in the cupboard. And it's still coming up. I'm just getting to the interesting bits of the cupboard. The dark stuff is still there. Oh no, it's very much ongoing. And I don't think I'm going to exhaust it.
Can I ask a question then?
John, with the doubt, are you just acknowledging that you have the doubt, and then you just acknowledge it, and then you just leave it as that? I'm doubting it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So what I'm trying to get at, so is there anything else that you can do when you acknowledge that you have the doubt? What else can you do?
I think, just in the way that I'm sort of thinking about this for this talk is that clearly there are doubts about everyday existence that we have to deal with, don't we? We have to engage with it. And we have to sort of keep our like Homer, you know, we have to keep going despite the voices that are saying, you're rubbish, you can't do this, you know, you'll never make it. So we have to acknowledge that that's a battle that's ongoing for us, but that it's interminable. It's interminable, that sort of debate with ourselves. It goes on forever, it seems to me. You never get to the end of it. I doubt if I'm any good at resolving my doubts. You know. I'll never be any good at it. Whereas the questions of great doubt seem to put us into a different mind frame altogether, which actually points to the fact that not only is it okay not to know, it's actually they talk about this great ball of doubt. It's actually the flip side of great faith. There's great faith. Incidentally, from just consulting with the folks in the group who know about these things, that mantra, great faith, great doubt, great determination, is an old ancient Zen proverb, not necessarily attributable to any one writer. But they are the two sides of the same coin. So actually, to be able to sit and say, I don't know, I really don't know the answer to, who am I? What about birth and death? But is it okay not to know, or in Zen are we supposed to break through into some sort of intellectual understanding? Well, no. We know that that's just going into more of those everyday doubts. Am I good enough? No. Yes. No. Whereas actually to say I don't know, and therefore relax into it, maybe something else comes out of that.
So you're more or less asking a question in a sense, and just leaving it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel great doubt boils down to your personal doubt that you're actually it? That you're not just part of it, but you're actually it?
Andy, you...
Thanks, John. Well done.
Well, I don't have time to think.
I thought that was a nice question.
Yeah, it was.
I think the only way for me to make any sense of that is to try and live it. If I start trying to play mind games with myself, then I'm lost. So the only thing that makes sense to me is to try and express that in how I live. And I think that's what I was trying to get at about taking risks. It's like when you look at the precepts, I used to think it was describing a path that was straight and narrow. But I'm increasingly coming to the view that it's actually broad and wide and rather meandering and has lots of possibilities. And that's kind of where I'm at with this, is exploring that, exploring the reaches of that. And not... So, stating the question that you've done, well, I think, well, okay, what does that mean? Now what? Even if you ask the question, my question back to you will be, okay, so now what are you going to do?
Be free.
And do what? And that's the point I'm making. You all the time, you are making choices. I am making choices. And it's how do I do that in a way which is compassionate and kind to myself and other people, and explores what that freedom means.
Yeah.
So it's I'm not satisfied with the words, and I'm not satisfied with those kind of I'm it, I'm not it. Okay, now what?
So that sounds like at the root of the great doubt is the fact that are you really the whole? Are you it?
I mean, as I said, great doubt is not an intellectual process, as John said. It's much more freeing than that. It's a whole body mind thing. It's swallowing the iron ball. It's really living it. It's body and mind. It's not just an intellectual thing. And I think that's, for me, I remember Roshi saying here, your life doesn't have to look like anything. And he said it for a week. And after a week, I finally, my life doesn't have to look like anything. So then, what does it look like?
Mm-hmm.
It was great because it took a weight off my shoulders. I don't have to conform to anything. But at the same time, Jesus, what do I do now? If it hasn't got to look like anything, then I'm really faced with a great field of choice. And I've got to explore. And that's what I'm trying to get at with the risk thing. If we confine ourselves, we limit ourselves. And I think, for me, my experience has been that my life is sweeter and fresher and more interesting if I can somehow take a risk, somehow do something different, and not try and get out of the groove. Because that's my trap.
Yeah, and mine.
I sometimes also feel sort of jumbled up in the words and the word doubt, and I sometimes think, right, go back to how it feels. You know, how does that feel? How does that doubt feel to me? Where do I go with that doubt?
Yeah.
And it's just, I keep thinking I was sitting just there and just feeling what it was I was feeling, and I wasn't even sure what I was feeling, but there was all these things in there to be looked at and to be explored. And just getting back to that feeling sometimes is...
Yeah, and I like what you said about where do I go with that, because that somehow comes back to choice and action. It's not enough to be on the cushion. Where do you go with that? Literally.
Sometimes I do feel it is enough to be on the cushion.
It's my refuge, yeah.
Yeah. Can I just add to that briefly? Thanks for giving me thinking time there. I think, I mean, all of us here, I'm sure, would agree that the Buddha really was onto something here. You know, what he saw was our tendency to want to grab certainty, even in the middle of a teaching that says there isn't very much that's certain. So we want to be able to say, I am it. Okay, got it. But maybe I'm not. It's about living in the moment, isn't it? Yeah, but don't get hung up on living in the moment, otherwise you might miss it. Yeah? And as you were saying, Karen, you know, about getting jumbled up in the words, am I actually okay with the feeling of not needing to know the answer to this? The big doubt, not sort of, is the bus going to turn up on time or not? I need to know some of those things, but the big questions that bother us a lot, am I okay with just being with it, with the uncertainty of it, and just giving myself some space to let that be? And then what happens in there? I mean, I think there is a further question about, so, okay, how does it manifest? And the Sensei will correct me but the risk of sounding a bit zen-y. I mean,
it being a Zen retreat, that would be unreasonable.
I don't know how many of you last night were watching the bats whizzing around the courtyard. Anyway, yeah. Yeah.
I missed that.
Watch tonight.
Yeah, well.
I think that relates exactly to what I was going to ask you about, which is the other end, which is the faith. Because I was thinking about your author and his inviting his children to jump off the sideboard, and he caught them, as you said, John, thankfully. But it's like, well, for some people, there are many experiences where they're not caught, and so they lose faith. And so I'm wondering more, I wonder if you can say a bit more about the other end, the faith, the trust.
Can I address that? Because the point I was making was the thing about great faith. It's not about faith in something else. The great faith is faith in I can do this. I am awake. That's the faith. I am awake. So it's not a reliance on somebody else. Although I take your point about the situation and being let down and all the rest of it. That actually is not what the great faith thing is about. It's actually much more. I can do this.
Well, I think I kind of get that, because what I was thinking about whilst you were talking and listening to the discussion is that all this thinking, your life's happening anyway, moment by moment. Whilst you're worrying about it, it's happening.
There's so much of what we are and how we exist moment to moment, which thankfully doesn't depend on us thinking about it. Breathing, for example. It's when we start thinking about it, we usually create a bit of a problem for ourselves. But I've just add as well, that idea of the sick, determination, is a good image for me. On one end is great doubt, those huge, not everyday doubts, but and the other is great faith. It's not just I can get through this, or I'll get through to the end of the week. For me, it's the recognition that everything I need to attain the way is here already. There is nothing to be added. If anything, those moments of clarity are, for me, when they do occasionally come, are a sense of something falling away. And usually the falling away is the thinking about it. It's something that I've let go of. It's not something additional. So I think the clarity that you already are perfectly equipped, or as maybe say in Dogen's terms, you already are a Buddha. You don't have to go anywhere to polish tiles to become a Buddha. You're already it. It's just that we don't see it. We think it's something else we've got to do on top, and then we're caught again. And I just add the last thing from me. I think it's no coincidence, unless somebody here knows it differently, but John Dead O'Leary was an ex-military man. So it's no surprise that he had his kids jumping off the wardrobe. Not wardrobe. It's the sort of thing they would do. Yeah.